Ride. I'm uber excited about this particular joyride. As is custom, I'm going to invite a few people coming in, and then we're going to get started. So I'm going to do all my invites, and then we're going to get started. And I normally take a little 30 seconds to do these invites. As you guys come in, just let me know you're in. And I think it recommends invites based on people who attended last time. But this month, February, is really exciting for me because I'm going to be focused on faith-based, not just faith-based leaders, just faith-based organizations in general. And we're actually going to be talking about when faith and strategy collide, or how we can implement strategy within the context of faith-based organizations. So welcome everybody, come in, please like, please share. I'm gonna really need you guys to engage me, hearts, questions, hands up, waves, whatever it is. I'm a little nervous about this topic because it's really important to me. And so because it's important to me, I'm nervous about presenting on it, but I'm really excited to be engaging you guys tonight. I hope I give some really good information, some information that you can share and disseminate. So I'm gonna give it a few more seconds for a few more people to tune in. Again, please remember, please like, please share. I've also included my website link in the description, mainly because on this particular journey, I know that I'm gonna share some things with you along the way that you're gonna wanna take note of and make mention of in the future, things that I may introduce that you may need to follow up with me on to get some clarity on, or you may even want me to come and explain these concepts in your organizations, in your religious institution, whatever. So I shared that information early. Please write it down, take it down. And again, I want to engage you guys, and I want you guys to engage me. So I am lucky to have some members from Love City on here tonight. So we talked to them. I did a little talk with them about strategy and some of the projects that we're working on. So I'm excited to be sharing this with you guys. So let's get started. So one of the major things when we start talking about faith-based and strategy, one of the concepts and the constructs that we've run into is that a lot of times there is a thought that when we engage in strategy, sometimes it takes away our ability to operate, right, in faith, and to operate at the voice of God, and to move as God is speaking. So I don't want this to be about the fact that we are now going to create a religious strategy, right? This is not about strategizing religion. This is not about strategizing in your relationship with God. But what this is about is creating a space where we are able to function, right, as the kingdom or as the body of Christ in a way that is efficient, effective, and sustainable. And so part of that conversation is why we're talking today. So one of the things that I really want to talk about, and I want to give you guys, if you looked at it, the title is Strategy is Subject to Culture. One of the things that I really want to be clear about, and that we're going to delve into for this first live, because we're going to do 4 of them, so this is a 4-parter, is that there's a saying that says that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And what that actually means is that, you know, when we think about strategy, when we think about strategic planning, right? And I'm going to bring it home and make it clear for all of us who have done New Year's resolutions, all of us that have said we're going to eat better or we're going to lose weight or whatever. Coming up with the plan, coming up with the meal prep, researching the food, all those things, those were not the hard parts. The strategy part was not the hard part, right, of making those resolutions or making those decisions to do something different. The hard part about those situations was the implementation, right? The integration of those new decisions into our day-to-day life. Why? Because our culture or our behavior or our normalized behavior, the things that we did normally on a regular basis, were already embedded in us. And so the struggle wasn't how to outline this plan, how to join the gym. The struggle wasn't finding what food to prep. That wasn't the struggle. The struggle actually was getting up out of bed every morning. The struggle was actually eating the healthy food and not ordering that food externally, right? The struggle was the actual implementation. Why? Because the culture or our behavior, so we're gonna balance individual behavior, collectively that becomes the culture of your church or your organization. The struggle was the actual culture. And so as we're thinking about strategy, even within the faith-based organizations, sometimes we don't actually think about what our culture is, right, as a ministry, and what our culture is, right, even as we're thinking about the body of Christ. We haven't thought about our culture. So we can hire consultants, we can do external work, we can go to conferences, we can look at all these different models of how things can be done. We can be passionate and really want to do something different. But what is going to systematically happen every time is that the culture of your church and the culture, right, is always going to eat up your strategy. What the behavioral patterns that you have already embedded within your organization, and I'm going to use organization and church synonymously because every faith-based organization is not a church. So I want to clarify that. But when we're thinking about our faith-based organizations, what we have to acknowledge, right, is that, hi Malika, what we have to acknowledge is that there is a culture to that ministry. There's a culture to that faith-based organization. So what I want to do this particular live is to talk to you guys about culture, how to identify culture, the impact of culture, and how it plays out in exactly what we do. Because yes, we're going to get to strategic planning, but you'll be frustrated with your plan because your implementation relies on your culture. Right? The power of a strategy is in its implementation. The power of the strategy is in the ability to walk it out, to complete it, to integrate it, to actually do it, right? The do it part is the power of a strategy. Other than that, it's a plan on paper, right? But once you actually get to the do, now you've actually implemented, that's the power of it. So we want to talk about culture because as I've talked to different leaders, the major thing when you get down to the core of what their frustration is, it's the culture of their ministry, it's the culture of their church, it's the culture of their organization, and that culture is actually hindering progress as it relates to your strategic plan. Okay, so yes, keep me engaged, y'all, because I'm talking and I need to know that y'all are connected with me. So thank you for the likes and the shares. So let's talk about culture. And how we can actually define our culture, or what are some areas where we think about what culture is. So one, I want to go back. How do I know that I need to address my culture? Before you talk me through this whole process of culture, what are some things that can give me some sign that my culture actually may be my problem? Okay. These are just 5 or 6 things that I've come across as a means of, or as a matter of identifying where your culture may actually be your problem. Do you have a number of meetings where there's only one person talking? If you're having a number of meetings where people are coming to the table and where there's one person who's leading the meeting, one person who's giving out information, they're called silent meetings, where you have one person leading and talking and everybody's just taking notes and nodding their head. If you have that kind of space where the meetings are either silent or unproductive, as a result of these meetings, I don't see anything changing, that may be one sign that you have some cultural issues that you need to engage. Do you have high turnover, right? When we talk about turnover in the business world, it's people leaving, coming in and leaving your organization. Are you noticing that within your church, it's a revolving door? Are people coming in? So you don't have an issue attracting people. You have an issue maybe retaining people and keeping them within your church, within your structure. So that may be an issue in relation to your culture, okay? Are you asking for information? Is it kind of like data requests? Are we collecting information? Are we asking for things, but then there are no actions being taken on those things? So for example, I've been places where they do surveys, where they pull demographical information, where, you know, we're pulling information about who's coming in our doors, right? And we're doing these cards and we say welcome and we hug the person and, you know, we engage them, but we're not doing anything with that information. We're not drilling into that information to see how many women are joining our ministry and do we have the kinds of things to support them, right? So we're not doing anything. We're just gathering data or gathering information on people. Are people afraid to tell the truth? Are people scared to say, I don't think this is going to work. I don't see how this is going to pan out, right? Are we conditioned people to be silent, right? To kind of suffer in silence as it relates to the things that we're doing and to kind of do what we say, right? And is there kind of like a bullyish feeling? Now, I'm not calling anybody bullies, but is there kind of a do as I say and not as I do, or get it done or make it happen? Like, are we constantly using that kind of vernacular where we're dictating things to people without them fully understanding the why of what they're doing, or them able to give feedback, right, on what they need to get it done? If we're just telling people figure out how to make it happen on a consistent basis, that may be a cultural issue in your church. And so one of the things that we need to think about is, how do we understand our current culture, right? How do we think about the culture we actually want to have that will be conducive to the things that we say we want to do? And how do we integrate that new culture into what we actually do? Before I get into that, and I really just want to bring up an example that helps us think about how culture actually impacts what it is that we do. So I was thinking about a cultural norm or a thing that we do in church, right? And I'm going to now say church. There's a thing that we do in church, and it's called discipling. I spent a little bit of time looking at the discipleship model as I've encountered it. So I'm going to say that this is subject to my experience. Some people may have experienced discipleship in the church a different way. I'm not taking that away from you, but what it's been as my experience. So what I've seen about discipleship is that it's been a model of a duplicative model. So we're modeling Christ's behavior, and then you're modeling my behavior as I model Christ, right? It's been a duplicative model. So we are recreating duplicates. While I appreciate that model, right, when I looked biblically, and this ties into some of the other trends that are coming into the church and why we're grasping at these trends, the discipline model biblically didn't look like a duplicative model, right? It looked like an applicational model. The reason I say that is because, and we'll use very high level, Jesus was a carpenter by trade. His trade was a carpenter. When Jesus goes out and finds Andrew and Simon, he doesn't disciple them into carpentership. He tells them, come and I'll make you fishers of men. He found them fishing, and he was set to teach them how to apply, right, their gathering skills, right, casting of a net and drawing. He was going to use that to teach them, right, a model of kingdom development and kingdom advancement. Right? So we start thinking about models of how we do things and cultures of how we do things. So if our culture says that discipleship is duplicative, right, and we haven't taught application, which says, I'm going to see you in the trade that you're in, I'm going to see you in the space that you're in, and I'm going to teach you how to apply kingdom principle, right, to what it is that you currently do. What happens is that we've also now created a space that, as a lot of churches are trying to move into this new realm of marketplace ministry, the culture, the duplicative culture that we've developed in the church, where I'm discipling you as a duplication of myself, right, is actually the behavior that's stunting most of the strategies that are looking to engage marketplace ministry. And so we can talk forever about the 7 mountains. We can talk very in-depthly, right, about all these different areas of the marketplace and how we're supposed to infiltrate and how we're supposed to engage it. But if the culture that's been developed within the church looks more like a model of duplicating the pastor, right, who may not be as engaged in the marketplace, it's very hard for us to then segue, right, ignoring that culture that's already been defined, to segue folks into a marketplace ministry model. And so there's frustration when I hear pastors talk, and I look at some of the posts and I see things, I pay attention. You can see and feel and hear the frustration because they're now ready to shift. They're now ready to transition, but your culture, the culture of your church, the culture of your folks, the culture that you may actually even have be responsible for creating, is now the thing that's keeping you from moving into a new strategy. And so it's very important. That's one example. It's very important to engage, right, and to start thinking about, what does our culture actually look like? And is our culture the reason that we can't progress forward into some of these things that we want to get done? Okay, so I want to, again, I'm not going to beat that up, but so much, but I want to give one further example of that, right? And so when we think about impact and why, again, this is important, because I don't want to go off on this rant about culture without you understanding why it's so important, right? If we look at that then model that Christ finds Simon, Peter, and Andrew, they're fishers. He then says, I'm going to make you fishers of men, not carpenters, right, but fishers of men. Now, when we go into and we look at the miracle, right, where he fed the multitude, it's Andrew, who was one of the fishermen, who says, I see a boy over there with fish and bread. The fishermen identified that there was fish. He didn't know how to multiply the fish. So Jesus comes in and teaches him multiplication. But it was the fishermen who identified that that boy over there has fish. When we look at that model again, Jesus is engaging people in their craft, teaching them how to use the skills of their craft to enlarge the kingdom. And when they are connecting, right, the skill of that craft into another space, he's teaching them a new applicational model. So the first model was, right, as a fisherman draw. The second model, he's showing him how to multiply fish, but it was still in connection to the thing that he originally did. He was a fisherman. Again, thinking about some of the areas that we're in ministry, right, and in church, what we've actually done is we had accountants who were accountants in the world. They came into the church, and in the duplicative model, right, a duplicative culture, what we did was we told the accountant he should want to be a pastor. Church grew. Now we have money. Who counts the money? Nobody, because the accountant became the pastor as opposed to being the accountant within the church, right? So if we think about how we transition this now as the church is evolving and growing, now we're talking about how to go back out and grab up the marketplace. But the truth of the matter is the marketplace was already coming into the church. We were walking into the church with our craft, with our skill, with our ability, right? We were lawyers, we were doctors, we came in, and what happened is we weren't able to explain to people how to apply through an applicational model of discipleship, right? How to apply discipleship and what they were in kingdom to the area of the life that they were in. So full-time ministry became, I got to leave my full-time job to become a minister. No, just be a minister on your full-time job and you will be in full-time ministry. But now we're seeking external resources. Now we're trying to engage marketplace, but we were already marketplace. Because every time a believer came into the body of Christ that had an external career, an external job, an external function, right? That was marketplace ministry. We were making connection. Now we're trying to get back to a cultural model, a behavioral model in the church where we don't abandon the marketplace, where we continue to engage the marketplace, but we have to remember that that now takes another shift. Why? Because the culture that we have taught and that has been embedded in us is that we go to our job and then we come into ministry. We go to our job and then we bring what we get from our job in to benefit the church. We go to our job, right, and we figure things out, but we bring it in. And now we're actually trying to shift people to thinking about how to take what we're getting in the church and putting it back out. It's a shift. And so I want to first encourage any leader who's watching this, be encouraged, but also be patient, because this is now we're undoing, right, years of cultural embed, right? That the behavioral norm of the church was always to go out and bring it in. And now we're telling people, shift your thinking and think about how you can take what you get here and put it out. It will take time and development, but it is doable. So how do we start thinking about culture change and change management, right? These business ideas that can be very useful to this transitional period within the church, within the faith-based arena, right? To be able to push forward and move us along as it relates to how we're going to engage this new culture, right? Of this internal, external versus the external, internal that we've been taught for years. So the first thing that we actually have to do is have a mission or a vision that speaks to what it is that we're trying to do and where it is that we're trying to go. That's going to be number one. Does your mission, does your vision, does the thing that you say that you do, let's start with what you say you do. The thing that you say you do, right, does that align with the vision, right, as it pertains to what it is that you're trying to accomplish? Is it clearly stated? Do people understand it? Is it a vision that's clear for people to see and run with, right? It says write the vision and make it plain, right? It doesn't just say write the vision. It says write the vision, make it plain. So make it clear. Have you clarified your vision to the degree that the people who are connecting to you understand clearly what it is that you're trying to accomplish? I know that we tend to be very cryptic. Sometimes we tend to be very creative in our vision casting and our creating, but this is the time where you give it brass tacks, where you literally say what you mean and mean what you say, right? I know that we tend to use a lot of buzzwords and hook lines and rhyming phrases, right? That happens sometimes within the cadence, right? When we're as ministers, sometimes there's a cadence. Sometimes you have to pull yourself out of that and say, how do I engage this, right? From a very clean and clear perspective, right? Just kind of let it be what it is. The other thing is you have to be open as a leader, right? And even as members to really think about what is our current culture. Do we do? Now we have what we say we do. Do we actually do what we say we do? Malika Holloway is on here. She is a PR guru professional, right? Omega is also on here. These are two people that have beat me to death. You can say that you do whatever you think you say you do, but what people know about you is actually your brand. And a lot of us have said, right, a lot of us has said that we do things, right? So I'm gonna give an example. A lot of us say we're mission driven, right? These are some of the things that we say, right? We're mission driven, we're global. Like these are some of the things in our mission statements, right? So we have to be willing to challenge that this is what we say we do and this is what we ideally want to do. Sorry, y'all. Is this what we actually do? And that becomes a moment of the self-assessment, right? The group assessment where we have to be willing to sit down and think about what we actually do and where there's alignment or disalignment with what we say we do. So this is where the work comes in. I want to read this phrase to you. It's a quote that I found online, and it says, it's possible to talk about grace and still be a legalist, okay? It's possible to talk about Jesus and still be self-centered. It's possible to talk about guests and still be unwelcoming. So check the culture of your church. It's possible for us to say all these things and actually not be doing them, right? Whether or not it's intentional or not, right? It's possible that we intended to do it and we just never got it done. So we want to be able and willing to check our culture. Here, this is where the work comes in. So there are 8 areas. If I find something online, I'm gonna tell you where I found it. There's a gentleman named Stephen Blandino. He's a pastor, speaker, coach, and vision. He shared on one of his web pages that I came across what I thought was a really good 8 pointers or 8 areas to look at in reference to understanding your church's culture, right? Understanding your culture and how it's impacting you. Right. So after we decide what we really would like to be, right, after we put that euphoria vision and that euphoria mission to the side, now let's think about what we actually do. So our vision, right? We talked about the vision. What are we actually focusing on, right? When we think about our actual vision, if people had to say what they thought we did, what does that vision look like? And we may actually have to survey people. Malika, again, gave me a great example. She told me to go online and ask people, what did they know me for? Nobody said strategy. That meant that I had to do something different, right? I'm a thought partner. I'm a business strategist. I work with people to think about how to do what I'm telling you to do. That's what I actually do, right? But if everybody thought I was an empowerment person, I was the joyrider, it was all over the place. Then that meant that I was not giving out. Maybe, around the corner and down the block, and with my clients, I was doing strategy. But with the general public, they did not know me as a strategist, right? So even part of these presentations is to present my voice, right, through the tone of how strategy works and how it can really benefit your organization. So when we start thinking about it, there may be a time to say, now this is my actual vision. Now let me put out a poll. Let me go on Facebook. Let me go on some of my platforms and ask people, when you think of, First Mount Moriah Baptist Cathedral, Pentecostal, Episcopalian Church of God in Christ Ministries, when you think about us, right? What do you think? What's the first thing that comes to your mind? And be okay with understanding that people are not, if they don't get it, that's just an area where you can identify it and think about what you need to do differently, right? So that's an area of disconnect that you can identify. Our value systems, what's the values embedded in the actions that we do, right, in this ministry, in this faith-based organization? Something simple to say, we do such and such because of such and such. Add a why to your what. When you think about the major events that you put on, or the major programs, or if you have ministries or sub-ministries or things that you put forward, right? When you think about those things, why do you do it? Why do you do what you do? So you should actually be able to sit down and say, especially around your table of senior leaders or group leaders or even people who run teams. If you run an event as a team, why do we do this event? So we go rock climbing because, right, we care about health and fitness, or we care about, holistic, right, wellness. So we want to engage body as much as we do soul and spirit. Have a why to your what, right? And start thinking about the trends in your whys. If your whys are scattered all over the place, if you don't know why, if it takes you a minute, if you're working to come up with a good why, I've done it. Okay, I'm doing this because, okay, yeah, it sounds good if I say that. People will think it's admirable if I say that I'm doing this because of that. If that wasn't on your mind when you were doing it, then it wasn't really a value, right? So start challenging yourself that when you're thinking about the next dance-a-thon, the next conference, the next concert, challenging yourselves to think about these major things that we do annually, these major things that we ask people to engage in. This is why we do it, right? This is what we do, and this is why, okay? Your church's philosophy. Now, when we talk about philosophies, and I try not to be cryptic, it's a ministry philosophy. So some of the ones that I found were like purpose-driven, seeker-sensitive. I came up with emergent, apostolic, multi-site, evangelistical. So these are some of your philosophies of why you do what you do, right? This is the church's philosophy. If a church is meant to be seeker-sensitive or seeker-friendly, there's certain things that we expect. Like at a seeker-friendly church, I kind of don't expect to walk in with jeans on and for the usher to look at me sideways, right? Because y'all told me y'all were seeker-friendly. So that meant that I could come in any old random kind of way, right? And that y'all would be welcoming, right? I wouldn't expect that. If I'm thinking about an apostolic type church, I'm expecting to hear about things that you've planted in other places and the ministries that are connected to you and trailblazing it. There's certain energies, right, that you expect in connection with these names. So when we start thinking about, I'm gonna get back to your comment, Linnell, guys. So when we start thinking about what the ministry philosophy is, just write it down. What is it that we say our philosophy is? If we call ourselves an apostolic, evangelical, whatever it is, that's your philosophy. Write it down. What are your traditions? What's the thing, the normalized thing, the thing that if we stop doing it, you would have a heart attack? I came out of the Baptist church. The Baptist church, they fed me. They fed me every Sunday. Every Sunday I went downstairs. I could tell you about Miss Clay T. Pittman, Miss Dorothy Davidson, Miss Darden, Miss Mullen. Those was folks. There was fried chicken. There was yams. There was mac and cheese. They fed us. That was a thing. On a Sunday where there was no food, we were confused. Right? And anybody that went to the church with me know, if there was no food, that was a normalized behavior. So when I went to church, when I left that church and went to different churches and they didn't feed us, and we had breakfast, there was breakfast before Sunday school, there was dinner. When they didn't feed us, I was confused because in my mind, I had connected church with church food. Like, so when service was over and I had to think about what I was going to eat, I was absolutely confused. That was a behavior that I had normalized with my church experience. That's a really basic one, but there are certain things that are traditionally normalized. You don't sit on that bench, and everybody just accepts that nobody sits on that bench. And like, why don't we sit on that bench? Like, we don't know why we so sit on that bench. We just know that that's the forbidden bench. So there are things that we do, right, that have become normalized behaviors, and we want to think about those because honestly, those are going to be your biggest strategy impediments if those normalized behaviors are not strategically aligned, right? So if your normalized behaviors are anti what you're trying to do, those are going to be areas that you're going to have to address very early. You may need a strategy just to deal with the normalized behaviors of your ministry, okay? Language. What words do we use, right? What slang, church slang, what vernacular are we using and what's connected to that, right? I know there was a phrase of a ministry I went to where they would call people CCs, right? They were church crazies, the conference crazies. Now go somewhere where it's squad goals and we thinking about our squad, right? I know that too many of those, both of those gave me a feeling. The squad one made me feel embraced and open. The church crazy made me feel like, well, are they calling me a church crazy? It made me feel very reserved as to how I wanted to be seen. So when we think about the language, right, of our ministry, of the words that we're using, how does it make us feel? How does it make guests feel? Do people understand when people come in and we're using this jargon? Do they feel excluded? Do they feel like they're not a part of it because we have our own little vernacular over here? You got to figure out the code. You got to code. I think Steve Harvey said he had a code cracker, cracking code. But if you got to do that, so if you have a welcoming ministry, if you're saying that I'm seeker friendly, and then I get here and y'all got all this language and I don't understand it, and nobody gave me a book to explain what these words mean. How friendly, right? How welcome do I feel walking in if that's what we're doing? So again, what language and what are you using? Your systems, right? What systems do you have in place? Are they effective? Are they efficient? And are they people friendly? One thing I have to always say, faith-based organizations, nonprofit organizations, most of who you engage are volunteers. So you're not paying them to be there, right? The value that they receive most times from being there is the feeling. It's how they feel, right? It's how they feel about being there. So if you're creating a feeling, if your systems aren't friendly to me, if they're not effective, they're not efficient, if I feel like you're running me in circles, you know, if they make me feel like the stuff that I only stay on my job for because they're paying me, how much do people engage, right, when they don't have that other motive? So we start thinking about what are our systems? How do we onboard members? We don't want to think about onboarding members, but onboarding is really acclimating people to what we do and how we do it, right? If we're bringing in people externally, if we're bringing in people from other ministries that had its own culture, what are we doing to introduce our culture to those people as they're coming in, right? What are we doing to explain to people what it is that we do and what's our model and how we welcome people and when we have service and how service is run and what's the expectation? Have we developed an onboarding for our members, right? How is the communication amongst teams, right? How are we managing our facility, our building? If I walk in on Sunday morning at 8 o'clock and it's 20 degrees outside, am I going to be sitting in service with 5 coats on because nobody turned on the heat, right? These things don't necessarily feel welcoming, right? So how are we managing that, right? Is it disorganized? Are we thinking about worship, but then there's chaos because there's nobody managing these areas, right? How are our systems around raising money? Malika, I gotta give her points again. We had a conversation. She said the church got 2 currencies. It got soul and it got dollars. How are we raising souls and how are we raising dollars? How are we bringing in those currencies? What is our process and how do we measure results? Anything worth doing needs to be measured. And when we think about measuring results, be clear that what gets measured gets done. What we actually count and pay attention to will actually get done. What we measure will actually reveal what we are doing and it will reinforce what we want done. So when you think about on your job, if they tell you you get paid per widget, you're going to focus on making widgets, right? How many widgets can you make? How many widgets can you make because I'm getting paid per widget? I'm measuring the number of widgets. So widget making is what will happen. Yeah, you know, customer service and all these other things may be a part of my job, but if you're not counting and giving me credit for the customer service, I'm gonna focus on widgets. And what may happen is while I'm making widgets, because I'm trying to make as many widgets as possible because I'm getting credit per widget, my customer service might be trash because I don't care about how I'm talking to you because I'm only caring about how I'm creating these widgets, right? When we start thinking about that, right? So what are we measuring? Are we measuring things that are counterproductive to what it is that we actually want to get done, right? What are we counting? What are we being accountable for? What are we tracking, right? When we're bringing in new members, if we're making them fill out that whole membership card with their name, their age, their social security number, their blood type, their date of birth, we want their fingerprints, we want a toenail clipping. If we're asking them to do all of that and we gather that information and we never make programs that impact them, then what do we measure it for? So we got to think about measurements as a means of revealing what we do, right? But also reinforcing what we want done, okay? That's measurements. And I'm gonna leave you guys. There's one more thing I'm gonna leave you guys with because we got 3 more weeks of this and I have a lot more information. One of the most important things that you want to do, and I'm gonna leave you with 4 questions. I found these questions on visionroom.com. It's 4 questions, and I'm gonna ask everybody if you could take out your pen, your paper, your notepad, whatever it is. I'm gonna leave you with these 4 questions to ask yourself in preparation for next week's live, because we're going to dig into these questions and how they really help us define a culture that also helps us create a strategy, because you have to consider your culture in your strategy development, right? So knowing who you are, knowing what you are, knowing where you stand in these areas is going to help you actually think about this next level of strategic planning, right, to get where you're trying to be. So here are the 4 questions. You got your pen? If you got your pen, give me a heart, give me a like, give me something so I know you with me. Let me know your pens are ready. Let me know everybody's ready to listen to these questions. So question number 1, what are you funding? If you want to know about your actual vision, if you want to be clear about what your actual culture is, where your money going? Now, I'm talking about this from a ministry, right, or a team perspective, right? If you sit down and you do your budget, I say, where's your money, where your mouth is? People say, put your money where your mouth is. Is your money where your mouth is, right? When you sit down and look at the line items on your budget, now, everybody should be with me on what a line item is. If you look at the line items on your budget, if your biggest line item doesn't align, or your second biggest or your third biggest, your biggest line item may be rent, right? So let's start with that. But if your largest line item, not in relation to your building, your edifice, your facility, right? But if your line items as far as programming or supply, if those line items don't align to anything in your vision, then your vision ain't what you say. What you actually do and what you do don't match. So I'm going to give an example that I actually found online, because I don't want nobody to think I'm coming for them and I'm being personal. If you're telling me that you are missions driven, but the biggest line item on your budget is supporting your music ministry, unless you're telling me how your music ministry is driving your missions program, then you are not lining up what you say you do with what you do. Where the bulk of your money goes is where your actual focus is, because that's what you're funding, that's what you're spending your money on, okay? So is there a disconnect between what you say you do and what you actually spend your money on? Then you mean, again, there's a cultural area to address, okay? What are your people talking about? Now, this actually means, as sometimes as leaders, right, we have to leave the 12 and we got to go sit with some other folks, right? Jesus didn't always eat with only the 12. So we think about that. Are we sitting with people and talking to them, right? What are they talking about? Right? Have a conversation, casual conversation with some of your team leaders. Have a casual conversation with some of the people in your teams if you are a team leader, right? What are they talking about? What are they excited about? What are they passionate about? If you got a person on a prison ministry and they just excited about music, or they really excited about dance, ideally their focus is not going to be on doing prison ministry unless they, again, are going to go dance at the prison. If they're saying, I'm excited about prison ministry and I see this dance ministry as a way to integrate, then that's great. But if they're on this team and all they keep talking about is something totally left of what they're on, ideally everything that you're focusing on, right, is going to be off alignment with what it is that you say you do, okay? What kinds of programs and initiatives, right, are people most interested in? So we start thinking about, what are we doing as a ministry? So when we look at our annual conferences and our convocations and, you know, our every Friday night, the stuff that we're doing, is it in alignment, again, with that vision of what it is that we say we do, right? Are we engaging? Are we using those platforms to support our mission? So if you have a conference every year, right, for millennials, but you telling me that your vision is to engage older, senior aged, right, believers, you're out of alignment. How does your conference align with these programs, projects, initiatives? What actually are you doing, right, and does it align? Okay, we start thinking about, what are the factors in your decision making, right? How are you making decisions about these projects? So we start thinking about all these things. And the last one is, what are the signs that back up your talk? So we have, what are you spending your money on? Okay, what are your people talking about? What are the focuses of your programs, right? The focuses of your programs, where's your attention focus? Where are you doing the most work, right? Yes, your treasure reflects where your heart is. It says where your heart is, there your treasures will be, right? So where you're putting your time, your money, your focus, that's what actually is your real vision, right? And do you have signs to back up your work? Okay, when we start talking about signs to back up your talk, again, if you're known for love, are people saying that you're loving? What's the fruit of the thing that you say you do? If you're saying you're apostolic, where are you planting? What are the plantings connected to your apostolic ministry, right? If you're saying that you're a house of rebuilding people, right? We repair people, we build people up when the world's torn them down. What's the fruit of that statement? What is the proof? Measurement. How do you keep saying that you're successful in doing what you say you do year after year, right? So when we start thinking about that, right, how do we look at those things? So I'm going to stop right here. I think I've left you guys with a lot of information, but I want you to think about those 4 questions. Where are you spending your money? What are your people talking about? What are your programs? What are your programs and initiatives and events? What's the theme surrounding those things, right? And what's your proof of concept? What's your proof that you do what you say you do? If you looked at all those questions and said, I got nothing, that's a great reason for you to tune in next week, because we're going to talk about how to get you something, okay? So if does anybody have any questions, any information? Now, I'm going to leave you guys with an action item. The action item for this live is, I need you to like, I need you to share. I need you to share, though, with intention. So I don't want you to just dump it on your timeline. I want you to dump it on your timeline and tag some people who came to mind that they really, 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 really needed to see this live. And what I also need you to do is, when you go back to your faith-based organizations, if you think that this information can be impactful, I'm going to tell you to tell folks to reach out to Joy Pittman at joypittman.com, right? And see how I can bring this to you and customize these conversations for your leadership teams, right? For the places that you support and the places where you're planted and where you're aiming to grow. Okay. Does anybody have any questions, any thoughts? Yes, Faustina. So I want to go back quickly. Linnell said something earlier, says sometimes folks have too many whys, and that was in connections with my statement with align your what and your. I do believe that sometimes people have too many whys, and what I believe that there is too many whys for is because they really don't have a why. So now you're just pulling things out the air. Whenever you do an event, whenever you do a program, there's supposed to be a goal connected to that program, right? Now, I'm not going to get into smart goal setting, but you can't have 99 whys. If you have that many whys, ideally, one why is conflicting with another why, right? So I want you guys to be mindful. If you can't hone it into 1 to 2 reasons why you do something, it may mean that it's too broad, it's too wide, and it's going to be hard for you to measure impact. Malika said I should charge for this. I agree. So I'm going to be very clear. These lives are only going to be up for the month of February. So as of the last day of February, which is Thursday, February 28th, these lives will be coming down on Facebook. And what that means is that if you want this information, you're going to have to engage me for it. I am very clear that the information that I put out has an immense value to it. But I'm also clear that my model, again, is to educate, impact, and empower, to share my resources, but I'm also not crazy. Okay, so what I'm going to say to you guys, that there is some content that I'm going to put out for the month of February. Like it, share it, engage it how you need to engage it. If you need clarity, feel free to reach out to me. My website is www.joypittman.com. My email is educate@joypittman.com, right? So you can reach out to me those ways if you want to follow up and engage. But as of February 28th, these lives, I'm looking at my calendar, that's why I keep looking over there. As of February 28th, these lives will be coming down. The information is up for you to engage while it's up for you to engage. Once it comes down, you will have to contact me and I will share the videos, but there will be a price point, reasonable price point, but a price point connected to it. So again, I'm telling you, like, share, put it out there, engage people, right? Let people know that this is a valuable resource. Let them know to bring their notes. Let them know to bring their pens and be ready to do the work. Okay. I appreciate you guys for joining me. I thank you guys for taking this time to share with me. I want to shout out, there's some people on my live who have been very impactful in me developing my way to present to the world. And so I want to shout out the 2 people I see right now. Doesn't mean they're not others, but I see Omega Celeste. She's an amazing graphic designer and web designer. And I also want to shout out Malika Holloway, who will help you in her very clear-cut and straightforward way, get you together real quick as it relates to how you are showing up in the world. So if you need somebody to get you together, you got Omega. And if you need somebody to help you put that visual out there, you got Malika. If you need somebody to help you create the visual to your vision, you have Omega. And they have been very instrumental in helping me frame what it is that I do and present it to you in a way that you can benefit from it. So I appreciate them, and I appreciate each of you guys for tuning into the Joyride, where we're hopefully discussing the matters that matter to you. So again, like, share, be intentional in your share. If you know somebody that needs this information, if you need me on site giving you this customized information and knowledge, absolutely engage me. I'm here to serve you. Yes, Ken Alston Jr. said this is good teaser content and definitely worth its weight in gold. Yes, I do believe it's a good teaser. I hope, though, there's meat to this teaser. I don't like giving people empty bread, right? So even though I can't give you the whole meal for free, hopefully this appetizer is something that you can utilize and start the journey with and work with. And I'm here to help you get the rest of the way. Okay. Again, I appreciate you guys. This is my third and final closing. I appreciate you guys. And yes, mark your calendar. So we're going to be going live next Monday, the 11th. The Monday after that, the 18th. And our close out Monday will be February 25th. So we're doing When Faith Meets Strategy on the Joyride. Share it with your people, right? And meet me next Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm so excited to engage you guys. You guys have an amazing night and be blessed.